Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. There are now over 183,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus worldwide, with over 7,100 reported deaths. The European Union's preparing to vote on a proposal to shut all external borders and impose a 30-day continent-wide foreign travel ban. In France, President Emmanuel Macron warned that French people are not heeding government directives and continue to gather in public spaces.
These efforts that I am asking of you, I know that they are novel, but the circumstances obliges us to do so. We are at war, and a health war surely. We're fighting neither another army nor our own nation, but the enemy is here, invisible, untouchable, which is advancing. And this requires our general mobilization.
Et cela requiert notre mobilisation générale.
France is planning to deploy 100,000 police to enforce the coronavirus lockdown and impose penalties for those who don't respect the new laws. The ongoing anti-government Yellow Vest protests have continued in the face of the new restrictions. Thousands of French security forces confronted hundreds of demonstrators Saturday in Paris. Macron did allow municipal elections to go ahead Sunday despite concerns over crowds. Meanwhile, the pandemic continues to grip Spain, now the fourth most infected country worldwide, with over 9,000 cases and 300 deaths. 2,000 new cases were confirmed over the past day. The Spanish government announced it's nationalizing hospitals and private health care companies to better manage the pandemic. We'll go to Madrid for the latest after headlines. In Italy, reports emerged that overrun hospitals may have to start refusing intensive care treatment to patients over 80 years of age. This, according to a draft of plans on how to cope with the crisis. Fiat Chrysler, PSA Group, and Renault announced they're closing 35 manufacturing facilities across Europe. Videos circulated on social media of Mercedes-Benz workers in Spain striking after they were asked to keep working during the pandemic. Canada has announced it's shutting its borders to foreign nationals, though the order has some exceptions, including, for now, U.S. citizens. Cuba's given permission for cruise ships to dock on the island if they're carrying COVID-19 patients, saying this is a time for solidarity and that health is a human right. A British cruise ship carrying 5 people who tested positive for coronavirus is set to dock in Cuba after days stranded in the ocean, being turned away by other countries. Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte has put the entire island of Luzon, which includes the capital Manila, on lockdown, affecting 57 million people. There are 142 confirmed cases and 12 deaths in the Philippines. Critics say the quarantine presents a near impossible dilemma for the island's many hourly workers who must choose between survival and their health. This is a Manila resident.
It's hard for the workers because they will get hungry. Their children will get hungry. What about the people who can't work because they are quarantined at home? They can't go out. They have no money for food.
South Africa has declared a national disaster, imposing massive travel bans. Sudan has sealed off all seaports, land crossings and airports, while Egypt, which has the highest number of coronavirus cases in Africa with at least 160 infections, announced it'll suspend all flights starting Thursday. 27 African countries have confirmed nearly 350 coronavirus cases. As COVID cases mount in the Middle East, there's growing concern Syria might face a major outbreak that could be catastrophic to civilians already dealing with the ongoing war and massive displacement. According to Iranian officials, the country has temporarily released 85,000 prisoners, including political prisoners, in response to the pandemic. The death toll in Iran has topped 850. Nearly 15,000 people have been infected. In Latin America, Chile is closing its borders Wednesday and imposing isolation as the nation has the highest number of coronavirus cases in South America. Venezuela and Peru have also ordered all citizens to stay home. Colombia and Costa Rica are also closing their borders and imposing curfews. Meanwhile, China marked a major milestone Tuesday as it announced it had just 1 new case over the past day. Here in the United States, there have been more than 4,500 confirmed cases and 87 deaths, but more accurate numbers are still not known as testing remains extremely limited. The numbers of those infected are expected to be thousands more if they had access to those tests. President Trump released national guidelines Monday designed to help control the spread of COVID-19, including avoiding gatherings of more than 10 people, stopping discretionary travel, avoiding restaurants, bars, gyms, and other public places for the next 2 weeks. Trump appeared to acknowledge the severity of the pandemic for the first time, saying, quote, "This is a bad one. It's just so contagious." Trump responded to a reporter asking him to rate his administration's response to the pandemic.
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job. And it started with the fact that we kept a very highly infected country, despite all of even the professionals saying, no, it's too early to do that. We were very, very early with respect to China, and we would have a whole different situation in this country if we didn't do that. I would rate it I would rate ourselves and the professionals. I think the professionals have done a fantastic job.
The reporter asked him to rate the U.S. response on a scale of 1 to 10. President Trump said 10. Medical and public health experts say Trump's early dismissal and delayed response to the outbreak contributed to coronavirus spreading undetected for weeks. Trump again attacked New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, tweeting, "Just had a very good teleconference with nation's governors. Went very well. Cuomo of New York has to do more," unquote. New York recently closed all its schools, restaurants, entertainment venues in an effort to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Residents across 6 counties in the San Francisco Bay Area have been ordered to shelter in place until April 7th. Directive affects around 7 million people. As of Monday, 37 states and the District of Columbia have moved to close public schools in some way. Over 37 million students and their families are being affected. Many districts are implementing alternative plans so that students who need it can still receive free meals. The U.S. Supreme Court is delaying oral arguments. It's the first time the court's taken such measures since the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. The court was scheduled to hear arguments later this month around Trump's attempts to shield his tax returns and financial documents from lawmakers and a New York prosecutor. The U.S. airline industry is seeking a $50 billion bailout package to cope with the fallout of the outbreak. Trump tweeted Monday, quote, "The United States will be powerfully supporting those industries like airlines and others that are particularly affected by the Chinese virus. We will be stronger than ever before," he said. The Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization have explicitly warned that referring to COVID-19 as a Chinese virus is not accurate and further fuels racism against Chinese people and other people of Asian descent. Trump did not offer similar assistance to homeless people, the uninsured, the unemployed, and workers who will be affected by the pandemic. In election news, Kentucky became the latest state to postpone its primary over the outbreak. Meanwhile, in Ohio, which was set to vote today, the fate of the primary was uncertain until now after Governor Mike DeWine ordered officials to not open polling places despite a judge denying a last-minute bid to delay the election. In the end, though, the election primaries have been postponed in Ohio. Election officials in Arizona, Florida, and Illinois said their primaries will proceed as scheduled today. In Ohio, the ACLU welcomed the release of vulnerable prisoners in Cuyahoga County during the pandemic. The prisoners either had their cases settled or released on house arrest. The ACLU and other rights groups are calling on prisons around the United States to release high-risk and elderly prisoners. Meanwhile, in New York, an investigator with the Department of Correction died after contracting COVID-19. The investigator had limited contact with prisoners, according to officials, but his death further fueled concerns over how to protect prisons during the outbreak. The New York City Department of Corrections said Monday it was suspending in-person visits starting this week. In New York City and other locations around the country, St. Patrick's Day celebrations have been canceled or postponed. It's the first time the event has been called off in New York City in over 250 years. Other major annual events include the Kentucky Derby. It's been called off. Major League Baseball became the latest sporting organization to suspend its season. Amazon said Monday it's hiring an additional 100,000 warehouse and delivery workers to handle a surge in online shopping. A government official said Monday the first clinical trial of a coronavirus vaccine had begun. It could take from 1 year to 18 months to fully validate any potential vaccine. The White House said more coronavirus drive-through and walk-through test locations will open this week. This comes as German biotech firm CureVac has denied reports Trump attempted to get exclusive rights to a coronavirus vaccine it's developing. Reports emerged over the weekend Trump offered the CureVac CEO around $1 billion for the rights, which would make the vaccine available only in the United States. CureVac's majority owner, co-founder of German software giant SAP, reportedly confirmed the conversation took place despite the recent denial. German officials also confirmed the story and rejected the idea, saying, quote, "If a vaccine is developed in Germany, then it is for Germany and the world," they said. The White House has also denied the reports. The Dow dropped nearly 3,000 points, and the S&P 500 fell about 12% Monday, the largest drop since 1987's Black Monday, despite the Fed cutting interest rates to near zero. Over the weekend, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said the stock market turmoil is a, quote, great investment opportunity for long-term investment. A reporter asked Trump Monday if the economy was headed toward a recession.
Well, it may be. We're not thinking in terms of recession. We're thinking in terms of the virus. Once we stop, I think there's a tremendous pent-up demand, both in terms of the stock market and in terms of the economy. And once this goes away, once it goes through and we're done with it, I think you're going to see a tremendous surge.
In Greece, a child was killed by a fire at an overcrowded migrant camp on the island of Lesbos Monday. The girl was believed to be 6 or 7 years old. The cause of the fire has not been confirmed. The Moria camp, which has a capacity of less than 3,000 people, is now housing over 19,000 refugees. Doctors Without Borders urged Greece Sunday to immediately evacuate refugees living in overcrowded camps because of fears the coronavirus would quickly spiral out of control if it reaches the camps. In Israel, President Reuven Rivlin has asked former army chief and head of the Blue and White Party, Benny Gantz, to form a new government in the latest blow to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu's Likud party received more votes than Gantz in this month's election, but Gantz received endorsements from enough lawmakers to narrowly hold majority support. The United States is pulling out of several key bases in Iraq and heightened tensions in the region. 2 Americans and 1 Briton were killed and over a dozen others injured in a rocket attack at the Taji military base near Baghdad last week. The U.S. responded by launching retaliatory airstrikes against Iranian-backed militia sites, and on Saturday, rockets struck a base housing U.S. troops. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo warned Monday the U.S. would take self-defensive action if attacked. New York Times is reporting Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other Republican senators have been privately contacting conservative federal judges to urge them to retire so they can be replaced by Republicans still while the Republicans control the Senate and Trump is in the White House. Over 90 Republican-nominated judges would be eligible for senior status, which opens up their spots on the bench while allowing them to keep hearing cases and receive full pay. Trump has appointed over 180 federal judges since coming into office, including around 50 appeals court judges, which amounts to nearly 1/4 of all federal appeals court judges. In Missouri, a gunman opened fire at a gas station convenience store, killing 5 people, including himself. A police officer was also among the dead. The identity and motive of the shooter has not yet been revealed. And in Maryland, the Senate voted unanimously to pass a bill providing $580 million to the state's 4 historically black colleges and universities over 10 years. The legislation was already approved in the Maryland House. It is part of a settlement in a lawsuit that alleges Maryland consistently discriminated against and underfunded HBCUs. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.